increasingly careful when it's dark or less of the event that caused it. What that means is wait for the water level to go down, because at least with flash flooding, those higher water levels usually aren't long-lived. So how does hail form? Let's talk about that a little bit. So the ingredients for hail growth. You need to have some sort of ice embryo, which is a tiny piece of frozen raindrop or ice or what have you. The temperature of the water has fallen below freezing, but it hasn't frozen yet because it hasn't had something to kind of latch onto. Some of you may have experienced this before, like if you put like a bottle of water in the freezer, and under just the right circumstances, when you take it out, it may still be liquid, but when you shake it, suddenly it freezes all at once. That's because the water inside was super cooled. You get sufficiently strong updraft, because what's happening with hail is that the smaller hail is falling and then it's getting caught by the updraft and getting pushed right back into the updraft. So you need to have an area of the storm that is allowing for hail growth. So you need an area that can support that super cooled water area. And you need the storm to be organized in such a way that the hail is allowed to remain suspended in a thunderstorm for a certain amount of time. Residence time, we call that. If it falls out too fast, it can't really grow. And you need optimal hail trajectories. That means the storm has to be through as long as possible this area of hail growth, which relates again to that residence time. You see kind of how it works there. The little droplets of water freeze to it. And if you were to look at a hailstone cut in half, you would see these rings inside of it, representing its trips through the thunderstorm. Hail can be very large. This is an image of a large stone from Kansas, Wagner, South Dakota, and Vivian, South Dakota, and they can get quite large here. So hail can be very dangerous, particularly once it gets large. So damaging winds and microbursts, right? Hopefully by now you've heard the Weather Service or some other professional that you would depend on tell you that damaging winds can sometimes be as strong as some very dense and tries to sink in certain parts of the thunderstorm, and it accelerates as it goes to the ground under gravity. And you can get some areas that are what we call microbursts, where this sort of becomes concentrated in an area that may only be a few dozen feet across at times. So this happens there are a couple of different processes, but in general, just know that there are, even with supercell thunderstorms or individual thunderstorms, in summertime thunderstorms, these sort of narrow zones of damaging winds are possible. This is from, I want to say this one was maybe the Jonesboro one. No, excuse me.
Yes.
I think it's the Jonesboro tornado. And what you're going to see here is just how quickly one can develop. Our friends, Arkansas Department of Transportation, this is one of their cameras. A couple things you can see there. As you can see, the rain in the background on the left-hand side that's now coming into your frame. You see all these cars driving by. And you'll see just how quickly it developed. And notice that this video is not sped up. It literally developed that quickly. Rained on. The area to the left is the rain that's being wrapped around. If you can kind of imagine looking towards that hook echo, this is what it would look like. And you see how quickly that tornado shape changes. That's very common. Tornadoes can very rapidly change. Also notice, like I said before, that the storm is not by a lot, but at least a little bit, is able to keep that tornado, the upward motion, separated from the downward cold air that's trying to come in behind it. And when these things are in balance, that's what's allowing the storm to continue like that. And you see just how quickly this happened you can see how, so some of those pieces that we saw there of debris were being thrown from the ground to cloud level very, very rapidly. But this is a good example of how tornadoes develop, but it's not always, maybe it's not the best example of what you might see. I've said before, more people in our area will be hit by tornadoes than ever see them. And the reason for that is a couple of things, and I'm going to go through those. And I don't even remember if this is the right place in my slideshow to do it. Okay, we're very close to the Gulf. That means that it's a really good source of moisture and warmth, which means that, like we talked about before, we don't necessarily need always the sun during the daytime to give us the instability that we need to support these things. That southerly air, I'm sure you guys have experienced it if you live around here. When those that occurs at times of day that unfortunately are harder to see these things coming at night. We get a lot of nocturnal tornadoes. In addition to that, because we're not necessarily dependent so much on direct sunlight giving us that fuel, we're getting tornadoes, and we always have gotten tornadoes in the cool season. We've had tornadoes in January, February, December, and what that means is that those times, the winter, the days themselves are even shorter. You're only getting 8 hours, 9 hours of total daylight, so the vast majority of your clock is dark. Whereas if you got the tornadoes in, say, June, when the vast majority of the clock is daylight, then this are decreased time in the summer of having nighttime tornadoes. So we get cool season tornadoes, which means that less daylight, much care sometimes whether we've had sunlight or not in a given day. Tornadoes can happen any time of the day here, more than anywhere else in the country. And then because we're getting tornadoes in the wintertime, the jet stream's the strongest. Our tornado season, if you will, our peak season really goes from end of February through maybe the first half of May. That's when we have our more spring-ish type season around here. These for central, the arc limit, north of the equator is strongest, and the jet stream determines how fast things move. Cool, 70 miles an hour. That's not terribly uncommon. You're not going to find that around here. These tornadoes wrapped around this thing, and the clouds themselves are already lower. And this is about, this camera probably 75 feet in the air, I would guess, something like that, maybe a little bit more. There's different things. That's going to mean that you have a very hard time seeing them and get on you very, very fast. And that's why it's so important that we get our spotters to tell us what they see, when they see it, as quickly as possible. Even if all you know is if your house has the roof get ripped off, I am very sorry. And I hope we had a warning for that, and I hope you're in a safe place. But if you let us know that happened, I can't put your roof back on, but I can maybe let your neighbors know that theirs might have a problem soon. And so you can, one thing we do have in our area that I'm very proud of is our communities that care about each other. I've seen it living here, and you guys all see it too. We've had numerous times where there's been people who had damaging events that their house was destroyed, but they're outside in their communities digging through, trying to rescue people, or they're trying to help other people find, protect themselves. So we lean into that a lot, and we depend on each other. So if you can tell us as quickly as possible that, hey, I had damage, but if you tell me that I can let your neighbors know it's coming. The quicker you tell me, the better. And every minute counts, because when these things are moving 60 miles an hour, every minute means a whole mile. So if you call me a minute sooner, I can let somebody know a whole mile ahead that something's coming. So really, really important. All right, so we're going to switch over. So just a moment. The microphone switch. All right, and so you guys should have heard it. Maybe the tone may have changed, and unfortunately, you won't be able to see us on the camera any longer. But we can still talk. So some terms with tornadoes: the wall cloud, right? It's a lowering. It's a rain-free section. You guys saw it in the video before. A rotating wall cloud can sometimes precede a tornado. You'll often see it above the tornado itself. It's that area down below that you can kind of see the bottom there hanging down like a little bell. While these things look a little spooky, at the point where you see them like that, they're not doing anything yet. Now, they look a little bit different. They can be kind of difficult to be certain about them, and they're kind of messy. And you see the trees can make it challenging to see what you're looking at. It's as messy as these images are, they're still some of the better examples. A lot of times you won't even see this. So if you do see it, at least now you know what it is. But I wouldn't expect to see these features. You have to be exact, perfect angle to view them, and you have to know exactly what you're looking at. But if you do happen to see one, and the shelf cloud really long, kind of you can see the rain behind it kind of filling in. And if you imagine just this being sort of just like a burst of cold air, like a shovel, or it's just the whole area is lifting the warm air out in front of it, and that's going to be your damaging winds. And that wall cloud back behind, you can see how the upward motion, those puffy clouds are all focused in the same area. If you were to look at that in motion, you would see that all those clouds and that wall cloud are moving upwards, and then it's slowly rotating. So that's definitely completely the updraft. Whereas if you look at the bottom, you'll see sort of a rolling motion as opposed to a left to right motion. So we've had some people get confused with this, because the squall lines, they'll say a C motion, almost like a baking pin or something like that. You might a rolling pin that rolls across the ground. So if you see those up and down sort of rolling motions, and it goes from across the sky like that, that's probably going to be a squall. But if you see it moving sort of left to right, treat it like a tornado. That's basically the gist of it. We really, as a weather service, it doesn't help us too much. Very often for someone at home to try to be determining if the tornado is on the ground or not. If you see it blowing things up and making debris, etc., then sure, tell us it's a tornado. But definitely don't wait to try to be sure. If you see that right there, it might be, treat it the same. As far as what your safety actions are. Just tell us if you see a funnel that may or may not be down, and we'll go from there. Definitely don't sit there and watch it and try to make a call, or if you see trees down, trying to figure out, are these twisted, or they fell towards each other, or if you're trying to make that, you see something. And if you're wrong, that's okay. We're going to help you. We're going to use whatever you tell us as a way to improve the forecast and improve the warning. So call us as soon as you see something like this. So some tornado safety. The number one tornado hazard is debris. Seek shelter inside a not safe, a mobile home place you want to be. Okay, I'm going to say it one more time. The very last place you want to be is a mobile home. Don't be in there. So here's some what's a good shelter? Tornado shelters, FEMA safe rooms. Those are the best options. Good options: basement, interior room. worst options, mobile homes, vehicles underneath are completely survivable, even in just any house that take mobile homes and throw them into they're just a mess. Please don't do that. So why the lowest floor? The winds typically are going to rip the roof off first and the highest floor off first. And oftentimes the lowest floor is going to be do not be in a mobile home in a tornado. I understand mobile homes are very, very good trailers, very good housing. I grew up in one. So we don't have any problems with that. If you live in a mobile home, great. I loved it because I had never lived in a place so nice until we got a mobile home when I was a kid or in a storm. They're just not designed to resist that tornado wind. So even though only 6% of the U.S. housing is a trailer, 54% of all the deaths that are happening in homes are happening in them. So that gives you an idea. It's just very dangerous. So 3-step plan. Ahead of the storm, identify your safe place, know your evacuation routes with your family and friends. And the day of the weather, execute your plan. And here's a key one. Contact your family and loved ones. We've seen, unfortunately, a lot of times where family and friends are distraught because they can't find their loved one. They're looking in this rubble, and then the family, the person who lives there, wasn't it? I'm glad I was at my grandfamily and friends through that. Let them know that you have not heartbroken, wondering what happened to you until you're able to contact them. And it can be a while sometimes. So make sure that somebody knows where you are and where you've sheltered. And as a last resort, if a tornado warning is issued for your community before you can evacuate from a trailer or a mobile home, a vehicle with a seatbelt on is not the absolute word, but it's probably better than a trailer. A mobile home is not where you want to be. I cannot stress that enough. So this is a similar type tornado. EF2 damage, you can see on the right-hand side, basically all lower floors were survivable for this home. You could have been anywhere in the house, basically, and it would have been okay. You probably would have lived through that. Maybe not even been injured. But the mobile home was just scattered to the wind. We've seen EF0s, EF1s kill people in mobile homes. Again, do not be in a trailer or mobile home in a tornado. Just know what we try to give you a heads up when the severe weather might be possible. So heed that. And if you get those warnings, get out of them. Just get out of them. Have a plan. Do not be in there. We're losing too many people over this. Stop it. Get yourself a weather radio. This works because our technicians here maintain these sites across the area, and when we issue a warning, they'll go off and let you know what's up. And so weather radios are really helpful. And you can use your cell phones too. We work with them all the time, so they're going to try to give you some information. If you're outdoors, a siren may go off, but you shouldn't depend on those. They are strictly designed for people who are outdoors. A lot of people these days are using their smartphones, so if those tornado warnings do go off or those stronger thunderstorms do trigger the wireless emergency alerts, or we call them WIA systems, that will send you an alert to your phone. So very important. And again, this is what they might look at. These the phones are usually smart enough to be able to tell that you're in the polygon we talked about, the warning shape. So if you get one of these alerts, you should definitely seek shelter. So this is really quickly, if you have an Android phone, this is a little step to make sure it's activated: notifications, advanced settings, wireless emergency alerts, and severe threats. And you can pause the video or back it up to see that again. If you're on an Apple device, then it looks like this: notifications. You scroll down and you'll see a section for Amber Alerts, emergency, common, and they're a really good way to receive warnings. It's always good to have multiple ways to get those warnings, but at least make sure that your phones are doing the work they should be doing. And if you're interested in weather radio, you can check those out and look them up. And they're really easy to set up these days, so shouldn't be too much of a problem. I have a few at home. I'd recommend you guys do too. And a couple of mobile resources before we're just about wrapped up for today. A couple of resources you can check out: Red Cross, FEMA. They have some apps that you can use as well. So one more time, what a spotter is: they observe the weather, they communicate, they stay safe, and they're critical to their role in helping us, the Weather Service, and the local officials. But here's what they are not. One more time, please don't do this. You don't have to be a weather expert. You can be. You don't have to be. You don't have to be a storm chaser. Storms. Do not break the law. Do not trespass. Do not break traffic law if you're trying to see these storms. And keep in mind that you can and easily will be killed by these hazards if you do not treat them with the respect they deserve. You're not immune to laws of physics. None of us are. And the last thing before we go, what to report. When did it happen? Whatever you're observing. Where? Trees down, there's hail, there's flooding, and who exactly are you? If you have those 4 things in mind when you call us, that's gonna help us out a lot. Again, the key thing to remember is that this is all about time. The quicker we get this information, the quicker we can act on it, and the more people we can protect. So it's really important. Time. All right. I think this has been pretty successful. We have a couple people in here. We can look if there's any questions available. Let's see. So I will ask questions now or later. Well, both, because it is later. If you have any questions, feel free. Like from I guess one of the Cars movies. Yeah, tornadoes, trailer parks, they can be very dangerous. We make sure these people have a place to be safe at. We really appreciate you, man. Lucas, we really appreciate you, man. Like firefighters are some of our most important, and so number one, we appreciate you for joining us, and number two, we appreciate you for the work you do. So thank you, and I'm glad you guys are finding this useful. All right, we'll give it a minute or two. We're watching the comments. This is live too. So if it's not live for you while you're looking at this, that's totally fine. We'll monitor the chat for a few days, and we'll get back to you through the text. So feel free to ask questions as you come across. Let's go one more. Comment. Let's see. Okay. So someone asked about storm chasing classes or anything of that sort. Okay. So here's the thing about important, because science does happen in the vicinity of storms. That's how we learn about them. All of these pictures that we have, that's obviously happened because someone observed these things happen. Now, storm chasing specifically, that is something that is up to the individual. It is not illegal. And some storm chasers do help us in the Weather Service, but the Weather Service does not have storm chasers or anything like that. Nor do we teach a class about it. If you are interested in learning something like that, just like any other hobby, there are safe we're looking forward to. So there are ways that you can get involved. And mostly to do is just to tell us what you see where you are. Either way, we appreciate the question. I think it was from Joseph. Joseph, really appreciate it. And all the folks who are mentioning, giving, we really, like I said, we're 24/7.